Welcome to She Wears the Pants, the podcast where women build companies that can hold their calling. I'm your host, Ashley Deland, business advisor, multi-business founder, and startup investor, guiding women to scale with structure, strategy, and self-mastery. Every week, we go behind the scenes of high-growth, women-led brands to talk about the real work, the identity evolution, the leadership required, and the strategy that actually sustains success. If you're ready to build a business and life you love, you're in the right room. All right, welcome back to She Wears the Pants. Today's guest is not just a force, she is a full body revolution. Monica Yates is an industry-leading trauma healer and embodiment coach, the CEO and founder of Monica Yates Health, and New York Times best-selling author. For nearly a decade, she's been guiding women out of the burnout of hypermasculinity into the freedom of feminine embodiment, helping them create lasting expansion across every area of their life, from business to love, from health and to fertility. And Monica, it is such an honor and a pleasure to have you today and share some time and space with you. So welcome.
Thank you. It's so weird hearing the New York Times bestseller. I'm like, it hasn't gotten read before, like out loud. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that happened.
I knew that you were going to say that because I was literally thinking before we jumped on, I wonder if I'm the first one to like officially announce that in her bio. Girl.
Yeah, you are. You're the first one to read that new bio that says a New York Times bestselling author. Like, what the heck? Anyway.
Oh my God. As we were just talking prior to recording, 6 years in the making. What a moment for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And was ready for it to be over as well. Like we were talking about beforehand, like looks glamorous. Absolutely not. Grueling.
Grueling. A lot of tears, a lot of shedding, a lot of, my goodness, patience.
Anger, rage, all of it.
Anger, rage, all the emotions. Okay, so Monica, just to start, how about you tell us a little bit about your background, just introduce you to the community.
Yeah. So thank you for having me, Ashley, firstly. So I'll give a quick kind of synopsis because there's a long version of my story and a short version of my story. What got me into doing this work and being so passionate about this? I mean, I grew up hating being a woman. I grew up thinking that being a woman was the bad end of the stick. I hated having a cycle. I hated men. I hated boys, like very much just tumultuous and a very unhealthy relationship with womanhood, but then also a very unhealthy and tumultuous relationship with men. It was this push and pull of like, I wanted to be liked by them. I wanted to be validated by them. I wanted them to choose me. But then simultaneously, I had this anger and resentment and bitterness towards them. But I also thought that that was what it meant to be like a good feminist, is basically hate men. So long story short, I lost my period after going off the pill. I lost it for 18 months. Initially, I was like, oh my God, this is great. I hate having a period anyway. And then my health started really declining. And if you saw a picture of me, there's a few on Instagram, you have to scroll a little bit, but I looked fully anorexic, like skin and bone. You would have thought that I fully was anorexic, but I was eating more than my dad. And basically I was going into like perimenopause. I was losing all of my hormones and my body wasn't digesting any food. So then I actually started being like, okay, I probably should get my period back. Started dating a man who was super into the masculine and feminine kind of work. And now I know, like, truly being embodied in it. Okay, he wasn't actually fully embodied in like the masculine, like the healthy masculine, but it was a starting point for me. And he, like the relationship I had with him, like he was the spiritual awakening that some people would say, in the sense of, and I had a lot of spiritual awakenings. Like there wasn't one moment where I was like, oh, this is what I was meant to do. But being with him, it was like, oh my God, I loved that he would bring me flowers and he would plan the dates and he would drive the car and he'd make the decisions and he'd push me up against a wall to kiss me. But then simultaneously, I felt so wrong for loving that and for wanting that. 3 months into dating him, I actually got my period back. And for anyone that knows, it takes 3 months for your follicle to come around into ovulation. And then obviously you get your period. So there was no coincidence with the fact that intuitively I was like, I think there's something to being in a relationship with him that caused my period to come back. I was doing my Bachelor of Nutrition at the time, and I dug really deep into research basically of how men influence women's hormones. That is what set me up with this obsession on how men influence women, actually understanding our bodies as women. Because when I first found out all this stuff about being a woman and we have different phases of our cycle, I was angry. Like, why did no one tell me this? Why was I brought up to believe? And why did school make me think that I could just look at a boy and fall pregnant? It made me have such a bad relationship with what it meant to be a woman because I had so much fear about what it meant to be, what it, meant to be. That doesn't make any sense. I had so much fear about what being a woman was. Sorry, baby brain, full glitch in the brain cells just
I got
said.
you. I got you.
Anyway, and so yeah, that then kind of set me on this trajectory of like really wanting to understand women's hormones and how men influence women and the whole masculine and feminine. And I then had a really bad ski accident where I had to relearn how to walk again. I had a 7.5 hour surgery on my left leg and a lot of surgeries after that as well. But that was then the initiation of releasing like the Miss Independent. I wore my independence as this badge of honor of I don't need anybody and I don't want to rely on anybody and la da da. But I couldn't walk, I couldn't bathe myself, I couldn't take myself to the bathroom, I couldn't even wipe myself at the bath, like when I was in the bathroom. And so all of those different components basically led me to becoming really passionate about helping women to heal their trauma, to step into their feminine and all of that. And just realize like the mask that so many of us walk around in, thinking that like the more independence I have, the more external success that I create, the more that I am this kind of like, perfect feminist icon, the better I am as a woman, versus giving ourselves permission to just be the woman that we want to be.
Yeah, you're speaking a lot of my anthems there for sure. I have very relatable stories. My hatred of being a woman came after a lot of daily sexual abuse from my best friend's
Mm,
father. So that was like a huge, I hated being a woman and my relationship with men was absurd, which forced me to become independent, also being raised by
yeah.
a single mother. It wasn't until the birth of Haven that I actually allowed
Wow.
myself to soften into that feminine energy and now lean much more on Ryan, my partner, which has only fast forwarded and accelerated my career, my life, my joy, my happiness. So it's
Isn't that crazy? Like the more that we surrender, I don't mean like don't do any work and be lazy, but I mean like the more that we surrender in terms of like no longer feeling like we have to achieve these external things to be worthy, the more that we actually like are in alignment with our feminine magnetism and what feels right for us in a given season of life. So, you leaning into motherhood, for example, it then literally quantum leaps you. It's
exactly.
crazy.
Exactly. One of my mantras as well, speaking about that, is like your work is not your worth. And I say this to clients a lot
Mm,
because as women, we make all of our work the level of our worth, which means we are almost consecutively going towards burnout because we have to feel like we're good enough for ourselves. As we were mentioning, we have to make seven
yeah.
figures a month. We have to be a good mom. We have to have, five fucking businesses and be a great
Yeah.
wife. Like there's so much pressure on us that it's hard to breathe most of the time.
Completely agree. I mean, and I think that half the time that pressure is an unconscious feeling of I have to compete with men and prove that I am as professional as a man. So
Yes,
like I often think about, oh, I can't wait to be able to be running one of my events and like this will be happening in November where I'm like on stage talking to the women and my husband brings me our baby and I'm sitting there breastfeeding. Like that does not make me less successful or professional or anything like that. It's just a different way of doing it,
exactly.
you
Exactly.
know?
So you were talking a lot on this podcast and also when I've been doing my research on you about being stuck in that hyper masculine energy, which is something that I also find myself in a lot. What does that actually look like in real life? And how would you
Mm,
help women potentially begin to shift out of it?
yeah. So let me give you some examples of kind of like how that might look. So it would look like you forgetting to eat lunch or just not making time to eat lunch. It would look like as soon as you wake up, you go straight into like go mode and always feeling like you're running out of time or there isn't enough time in the day to do things or like you're always behind. So it's just this kind of race, like you're racing against the clock of I'm never enough. I always have to do, I'm always failing. That will often kind of be some of the patterning behind the hypermasculinity and kind of how you're showing up day to day. A really obvious one is that after work, when you have the permission because you finished work to be able to just soften, drop back into your feminine, let your man lead, you can't. You start butting heads with your husband. There's too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation. Maybe he's trying to take you out for a date or he's trying to make a decision for something and you're then micromanaging or rebutting his decision. That's you being stuck in your masculine. It could be that you are like you're being hyper reactive to something. You pick your kids up from school, they're crying in the car, or there's a bunch of noise in the car, they're all screaming in the back or something. And instead of you just being able to like brush it off, you quickly react. And not because like the masculine quickly reacts. And I want to clarify that. That's not because that's a masculine thing. It's because a woman who is designed to be in her feminine, when she is in this place of hypermasculinity, she is so out of alignment that it causes her to then be in that kind of hyper reactivity, emotionally dysregulated. You know, she's being bitter, she's snapping people's heads off. That's not masculine energy. That is a woman that is misaligned. And it will show up as this kind of, it shows up as internally for us, I only feel safe when I'm in my masculine. But that's an illusion of safety, right? Because if you actually felt safe, you wouldn't be yelling at your kids in the car to shut up. You would just be like brushing it off and driving home and letting them deal with it themselves or whatever. So that would be another example. Another example is even just like when you are getting ready for bed and doing your skincare or something, you're rushing through your skincare, your brain is going through all the things you didn't get done that day and how you failed and you weren't productive enough. Even little things like for some women, you know, picking their nails, picking their skin. It's this thing of, I didn't achieve enough during the day. So it's this false sense of achievement of let me analyze and pick every single pore on my skin because now I'll feel this like false sense of achievement before I go to bed. Like even that is the hypermasculinity.
Oof, that is good.
Yeah.
Damn,
Yeah.
I'm still in it.
So yeah, so to your second part of the question of like how can we start to shift that? I would number one, firstly start to notice when you are I'm really big nowadays on ensuring women do not put themselves in this kind of like this position of like, oh, here's the list of feminine traits, here's the list of masculine traits. It's not helpful. It's not supportive. It just causes overthinking and like overanalyzing of your behavior. The women listening to this episode, you guys are all like high achieving, go-getting women, or you wouldn't be here, right? It's not helpful for you to sit there at the end of the day and think, oh, I was too my masculine because I was working all day and leading a team and blah, blah, blah. Because being in your feminine is not just like a facade or a costume that you put on. Being in your feminine, it's not about the task that you're doing. It's about how you're doing the task. So I can be working all day long. I could be having like a 16-hour day, but if I am in such a deep flow state, I am so in my feminine. Even if I have been doing technically what some people would say is a masculine task. You think about all of the women that work in finance and it lights them up. They love it. They love looking at an Excel spreadsheet. Like, I'm not that woman, but if you love it, amazing. And if that lights you up, you're not in your masculine, right? You can still be in your feminine. So I don't want women to think, oh, here is this list of feminine things I have to do. Here is this list of masculine things to do. It's a lot more helpful to think about how to get out of that hypermasculinity is realizing when you are, as an example, emotionally dysregulated, because that's telling me you're not in your body's natural state. Your body's state of like balance and homeostasis and equilibrium as a woman is feminine. So if you are disconnected from that and you're running on this like trauma loop of the only way for my body to feel safe is to be in this hypermasculine state, then you'll have the emotional dysregulation. You'll have the emotional eating. You'll be punishing yourself with your workouts. You won't be able to like co-regulate your child, for example. Those are going to be some of the things that you might start to recognize. Oh, here are some ways that I'm showing up in my hypermasculine. What could I be doing instead throughout the day that is going to bring me back to a little bit of homeostasis? Women often think, oh, I have to add something else to my to-do list. I got to add another task of like an hour of fucking breast massage in the morning. You don't need to do that. That's not what it means to necessarily be feminine, right? Yeah. But what would be a good idea, for example, is 5 minutes in the middle of the day, or when you're having your lunch, your phone is left inside. If you're at home, or even at the office, your phone is left inside, and you go outside and you eat your lunch. We're in spring, the weather's beautiful. You've just grounded. You've come back into your body. You've shifted your energy. That could help bring you back. Other little things like, how do you set up your workspace? Is your workspace this like beautiful feminine experience? Or do you not allow that for yourself? Do you think that it's like a waste of time or whatever? Because it's not a waste of time. It sets you up then for the energy in which you're working in. So that could be another little thing that you do.
I always thought that I'm Enneagram 3, I'm an Aries. I love control. I love structure. I love being an overachiever. I always thought that those were masculine driven tendencies. However, if you step into my office here, you see the crystals and the plants, and the grounding is, I'm half faith driven. I'm half blue. So I love that you just stated there that it's feminine alignment in, masculine tendencies or masculine deliverables or roles, which is very much a shift in mindset for me. Speaking about mindset, I love how you were talking before about the trauma, and I'd love to get your opinion on this because we know that if anybody out there has any trauma within their body, which is pretty much 100% of us, a great book,
yes,
The Body Says No. Can you mindset your way through the trauma?
Absolutely not, because 80% of signals are sent from your body to your brain. 20% of signals are sent from your brain down to your body. So look, you'll get 20% of the results for yourself if you do mindset work. Great, right? Better than 0% of the results, but you're only getting 20%. So you need to, really, you want a bit of mindset, but you want a lot of somatic work. 80% of it should be somatic, 20% of it should be mindset, because that's literally what's happening in your body. So the way that I do it is all of the healing work that I'll take clients through is somatic, because I know that's actually what creates the healing. Then when we are doing integration, so that you can actually integrate the healing into your life and into like the version of you that you want to be, so that it actually sticks. Some of that integration work that I will give them is still somatic. So it's still body-based in terms of the tools and whatnot, but some of it is actually then mindset. There can be a healing component to mindset. So an example is women will say like, how can I start to heal my relationship with men? And I'll say, understand them. Because when you understand the opposite sex, that in and of itself, you will find healing for your feminine nervous system, of just realizing like, oh, the feminine actually cannot feel safe to be expressed, to be feminine, without there being the masculine safety. So if you do not have a good relationship with men or the masculine, and when I say the masculine, I'm talking about boundaries, systems, like discipline, discernment, like their masculine traits too. If you don't have a good relationship with those things, you will not be able to be the most feminine, radiant, magnetic version of yourself, because the feminine cannot feel safe without the masculine. So there is a component of mindset that can be healing, but most of the time people focus on like, for example, like money mindset. Like, yeah, that's good. It's important. But if you have trauma about money, it doesn't matter how many mantras you do, because if every time you say money is abundant, but your body then goes, and you can sometimes feel it and hear it. No, it's fucking not.
Yeah.
What are you actually instilling in your body in that moment? You're instilling, no, it's not. And then you keep instilling that, versus if you did if you healed your trauma around money first, and half the time that trauma around money isn't even necessarily about money, right? It's about something else. If you healed that first And then you had the mantras that would then help it stick, because you would then believe money is abundant because your body could receive that.
I love that. Okay, because you're such a prominent figure in the world and now a New York Times bestseller, I'm just going to drop that a few times. I
Thank you.
actually, I can say that people are going to look at you like that girl has all her shit together. She has healed
Mm,
trauma. She's here speaking on stages. I'm so far from what she is. Like, let's
mhm.
speak to that because I know
Yeah.
that sometimes we get onto the stages and people think like one day I'll be up there, one day I'll be as good at that.
Hmm.
Let's kind of break those barriers and like talk to me
Yeah.
about your own healing, your own trauma, and like how all of that has or has not changed the way you do business.
Love that question. First thing I'll say, and I really like that you brought this up, is this is actually one of the reasons why I have never re-recorded my signature program, Queen Alchemy, that I made in 2019, because it's got videos of me from 2019, 2020, some 2021 as well. And that version of me is closer to the women doing the program.
Hmm.
So it serves them more. That this is so it's very intentional. And like, yeah, the video quality isn't the same and I look younger and all of that, but it's intentional because if I sat here and tried to tell them, that gap would feel bigger. And also I would not be able to articulate things the way that my past self can, because it's kind of like, when you become, when something is so ingrained in you that you like forget to mention the basics, it's that. So I would actually not mention things that they need to know, because to me, that was like, that was 7 years ago. So like, I literally can't even necessarily remember what that felt like for me and what I needed to know. So yes, that's the first thing. And I think people get really wrapped up in like new, but new isn't always better. Sometimes you actually want the old because that is going to resonate more with you when it comes to like courses and mentors and teachers. So yeah, in terms of my own healing, I mean, I went through it. I'm like early on. I'm 28 right now, so I'm quite young. But I kind of had my come to Jesus moment, or whatever you want to call it, well, multiple of those moments when I was very young, where I was really forced to face all of this stuff. So I mentioned the ski accident and whatnot. Other things were my relationship with my dad was one where he was there, but emotionally unavailable all the time. He's the youngest of four boys. Obviously, stuff gets passed down to him. He was traveling all the time for work. Classic situation of dad works all the time, mum's at home. So what that then created for me was it created this dynamic of mums. How do I say it? Mums. Like she's a stay-at-home mom, and I would always be like, I would always be like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
I'd be like, that's not cool. But dad flying to Japan, going here, we lived in New York, he worked in the Rockefeller Center. That's cool. And I actually remember getting like being on airplanes, and we would like, fly to different countries or whatever for travel. And I would always watch this movie, The View from the Top. I don't know whether it has like Gwyneth Paltrow in it. It's a kind of old movie, right? I would watch this shit on repeat. And when I think about it now, and I've mentioned in a few podcasts, because when I think about it now, I'm like, that programmed me to idolize being single because she couldn't keep a relationship in the movie. She would travel everywhere, but she lived, in my mind, the glamorous life because she was in New York, then Paris, then London, and working first class and blah, blah, blah. So I idolized this life of travel. And so actually, when I finished my gap year and I finished my degree and everything, I was then like kind of like living that nomadic lifestyle because again, I idolized it. It was actually really hard. It was very dysregulating to my nervous system. It was not good for me at all, but I idolized it because I thought it was cool, right? It was like, I really had this thing in my head of like, I was always told I was too much, too loud, too talkative, too this, too much, like too that. And so it was dimming my light. It was, I am too high maintenance. I'm too much. I talk too much. I'm too outgoing. And so I like part of my healing was like me thinking that I had to be less in order to be loved more versus I could be as much as I wanted to be and still be wildly loved. I had a lot of I had a lot of conditional love towards myself, and of course that would project into conditional love towards other people. I mentioned about like my bad relationship with men, and that came from some really bad sexual situations when I was younger that I didn't even know that I had, because I just gaslit myself to them basically. And I just thought, oh, that's just being a teenager, right? That's just what boys do. It was a lot of just like, yeah, boys just want sex. So that's just what they do. Just like shove it under the carpet. And it wasn't until like I was in a relationship that those triggers and that kind of like armor was then the thing that was blocking me from being able to open, to the point where my boyfriend at the time was like, has somebody like hurt you in the past? Like, what has gone on? And it hadn't even clicked for me. Like, I remember this moment so clearly. And it's like, it didn't even register that I had, because I just thought, well, that's just what happens. And I don't know whether you had that with your experience too, of just like, you just normalize it, right? And you think about how many women are in unhealthy relationships because they normalize that kind of behavior, right? So the overarching kind of thing though that I do want to say with my story, Ashley, is that I remember telling my mom one time, we were actually at a Tony Robbins, one of his events. And I said to her, I said, I wish you and dad gave me a harder upbringing so that I would have more of a reason to be successful. So I had internalized this belief of, yeah, in order to be like a New York Times bestseller or like on stages or doing this, I have to have some victim to hero narrative. But the truth is, my parents are still together. Food was always on the table. We had money, not to the point where like I got everything I wanted, but to the point where like we could go on family trips. I had a great education. Like, you know what I mean? I never felt like, oh, we wouldn't have a roof over our head. I did a gap year after school. I went to university. Like, I have had a quote unquote very good life, very privileged. So that then made me gaslight myself into thinking I don't have any trauma and I have nothing to complain about. So I'm really passionate about mentioning to people that you do not have to have gone through like what you've gone through, Ashley, to actually give yourself permission to do the healing work, because we all have trauma. If you have really bad perfectionistic tendencies, that is a micro trauma that is likely turned into a macro trauma. So you having this constant need to be perfect for the last 30 years of your life, I'm telling you, that has turned into a big trauma in your body where you get all like hot and sweaty, for example, when you're trying to give a presentation because you're so worried about fucking it up and everybody rejecting you and you losing your job. That's trauma going through your body where your body does not feel unsafe. Yep. And so a lot of people, I have this all the time of like, oh, but like, I'm not that unhappy, so maybe I don't need to do this. Or I haven't had any trauma, so like, I don't have to do this kind of work. We think that trauma is only, seeing somebody die, having really bad abuse, being sexually assaulted, but it's so much more than that, right? And so that was a big awakening for me as well, of just because I've had a perfect life, quote unquote, doesn't mean that I have no healing work to do. And it doesn't mean that I can't give myself permission to want to feel better in my life.
That just landed like so hard in my soul. And if I know it landed for me, it landed for everybody listening too. And it's funny being on such a complete opposite side of you, of having been so shameful of my story and hiding it for years and years, which I only actually let people into my story with the first episode of this podcast, which gave so many women permission. They were just emailing me, you gave me permission to lean into my story, which is how Unreserved, the book, came into play, was because it took me this long, 39 years, to finally let the public in on my story, because it was just such a huge shame for me. And I was so embarrassed of it. Moms can never do it right, eh?
But also like that is the situation for so many women, right? Which is like this catch-22, because they think, oh, if I keep my story to myself, then no one will think anything less of me. Nothing will hold me back. No one will think, oh, poor me. But when we keep that inside, we actually still create that externally in our lives. Like we limit our own success, joy, happiness,
For
like
sure.
everything because of the shame that we're carrying, and also because of like the trauma in our body. And when we allow ourselves to not only like tell our story, but actually be like, I want to free myself of that, that can actually be harder sometimes,
Hmm.
because for some people they use their story as an excuse too. And like, I'm not saying that you were, but for a lot of people it's like that victim narrative, it gives them permission to not have a big life because they're also afraid of what could happen. Like there's just so many layers to it, right? And I think sometimes we think trauma is so black and white and simple, and my take on it is like, this is how I like to say it. Healing is not complicated, but it can be complex.
Yes.
So to me, healing, it's simple. Like it's very simple. Your body knows how to heal, your body knows how to release. You just have to create the right environment for it to do so. It's complex in the sense of like, there's no one size fits all. I'm a really big believer in that. It's not black and white. And there's so many layers. And I think when we try to just have this like simple black and white answer of like, oh, this is why I didn't tell my story, of like this one answer, it's like there's probably multiple layers.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like we're so multifaceted, right? That it can almost get confusing of like, oh, I was afraid what people will think, but I want to be seen, but I don't want to be seen, but this, that, there's like all these dualities happening at the same time within us. And it can just create a lot of overwhelm and confusion.
And also, it was difficult for me what you turned and what you said to your mother. I would turn often to my mother and say,
Mm,
like, how could you let this happen to me? Like, how
yeah.
could that happen? That's where the story of like moms can never do it right, no matter if it's the perfect or the unperfect. And you're sitting here in front of me right now, pregnant. So how do you
Yeah.
feel like all of that beautiful healing and everybody has their purpose, their passion, their story in this
Mm.
lifetime. How do you think that's going to change you to become a mom now?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I know I'm going to fuck my kid up no matter what I do.
I think we all do.
So,
And
yeah, because at the end of the day, it's not about what you do, it's about their perception of it.
mm-hmm.
You can do everything by like the perfect, like parenting, whatever book that you want to read. And you could do everything according to that book. And your kid, I'm promising you, will still have trauma they have to work on. They still have things they have to move through, because it's not about actually what happened or what didn't happen. It's about how they perceived the situation. Hence, your parents, you could know cognitively, my parents loved me so much or love me so much, but you could feel inside like, but why don't I feel not enough for them?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's about your perception when you were a kid. So I wanted to say that first thing of like, I do not think that I'm going to be the perfect parent or anything like that, because I just don't think, I think you actually can be the perfect parent and also not be the perfect parent at the same time. Like there's just no perfection. Like there's no perfect parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I will say is that, especially having a boy, very excited to have a boy. I feel like it's very on brand.
Yes.
And I always wanted to have a boy first anyway. Um, from doing, like, your question was like, with doing all the healing and everything, how do I feel like that's going to set me up for motherhood? I would say the biggest thing actually that I feel so like confident in is my regulation. I used to really identify with, oh, well, I'm just a double Sagittarius. So that's why I'm fiery. That's why I'm hot headed. That's why I'm this, right? Like, I know you're a fire sign too. So
Double
I would,
fire,
that, yeah,
yeah.
that, yeah. And look, my fire sign definitely, like, I am an assertive, fiery, like, don't fuck with me kind of person. But the way that I used to, before doing any of this, the way that I used to show that was aggressive. It was reactive. It was emotionally dysregulated. And I would hide behind, well, I'm just a double Sagittarius. So that's why I'm like this. Like, it's just my personality. I have so much nervous system regulation and like nervous system. I know how to like hold a lot and expand my capacity, that I feel so equipped for the chaos and the dysregulation that motherhood can be, and that like having a baby and a toddler and all of that. So that's one thing that I feel like really grateful for doing the work, especially because we know that when a child is young, like, we are co-regulating them, like we are the ones regulating them. And so I didn't grow up with having someone that taught me how to regulate. So I think it's going to be like, it's healing to then be able to regulate your child. It's healing to be able to give your child what you didn't necessarily get. So that's a really big one. I would say the other thing also is just, I'm excited to raise a little boy that turns into a man that is like a very masculine man, because many people listening to this, especially if you're a bit younger, and you're dating and whatnot, you probably are well and truly familiar with this. But the soft boys, or the lazy boys that I call them, that are coming through, of just these men in their late 20s and early 30s that just don't want to be men. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to lead. They're lazy. And it's partly our fault because we've been in control and done everything for them so they don't have to. But I'm also just really excited to be able to raise a man like as a man in my mind should be, so that he can be one day like that protective source that I feel like humanity right now needs. So many women, they feel unsafe being a woman. And in my opinion, part of that unsafety comes from the fact that we cannot rely on the average man walking down the street to come in and to save us, to intervene, to help us if we were to get into a bad situation, or if there was something dangerous happening, And so I want my child to be that man that will like 100% protect every single woman that he comes by if she needs it.
I love that. If you could whisper one truth into every ambitious woman's ear, what do you think it would be?
One truth into every ambitious woman's ear. Oh, you don't need to do this the way that you think a man would do this. Mm-hmm. Like, how many of us, I say that in the sense of like, how many of us feel like the only way to grow our business is this methodical, logical, like every day is the same kind of energy, versus actually honoring your intuition, your creative flow, like what you're being called to, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, God, just really trust your intuition, even if it doesn't make sense.
I love that. That leads into our final question, actually, the signature She Wears the Pants question, which is, looking back on your journey of wearing the pants, what message do you want to relay to future generations of women in business?
Do not take on the belief that you have to choose between success and money and love. Like, there's so many women that are now the female breadwinners, and it's amazing, and it's only going to get more with what we're seeing with the research. But do not let that make you think or internalize this blueprint of like, well, if I'm the one making the money as the woman, then I'm the masculine, or I have to hold everything and the pressure is on me. No, it's not. Money is not inherently masculine. And I do not want women to feel like the more success they have, the harder it has to be with love. And I'm worried that's going to start to happen. And then women are going to go backwards of thinking, okay, well, the only way that I can have my dream relationship and to feel supported and loved and whatnot and safe with a man is to be a housewife. If they don't want to be a housewife, I don't want women to think that.
Interesting. That's a lot of food for thought right there. Monica, for people that are now obviously obsessed with you, where can they find the book? Where can they find you? How can they continue the conversations with you?
Thank you. MonicaYatesHealth.com has everything that you need. The podcast, freebies, all the things. The book is called Becoming Her. You can buy it wherever you can buy books. And this was just, thank you for like the honest, vulnerable, authentic questions. They were really beautiful, Ashley.
Thank you for sharing your space, your time, and your wisdom. I know that landed hard for me, so I can just imagine how many people that you just touched through this podcast. So thank you for being here.
You're so welcome.
This was She Wears the Pants, where women rise into what they're meant to hold. If this episode moved you, changed you, or challenged you, send it to a woman you want to see rise. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready for deeper strategy, identity expansion, and high-level support, you can find me on Instagram at Ashley Deland. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building intentionally, and becoming the woman your calling requires.